The vast emptiness of deep space stretched endlessly in every direction. Stars twinkled like distant memories, cold and unreachable. In this endless void, a lone spaceship drifted, powerless and silent. It was the Vilfar, a Xelari research vessel. The Xelari were an advanced alien species, proud and disciplined, known for their strict adherence to logic and order. But now, their ship was in trouble. A sudden energy surge had damaged their main engines, leaving them stranded far from any known system. Life support was running low. Their situation was becoming desperate. Captain Jikar, leader of the ship, stood on the dimly lit bridge, his sharp, blue eyes scanning the failing control panels. His crew, a team of elite scientists and engineers, worked tirelessly, but the truth was clear. Without outside help, they would not survive. Jikar took a deep breath, his pride warring with logic. The Xelari rarely asked for help. They were one of the most advanced civilizations in the sector. But now, none of that mattered. Survival mattered. He turned to his communication officer, Tilan. "Send a distress signal," he ordered, his voice firm but tense. Tilan hesitated. "To whom, Captain?" "To anyone who will listen." A plea to the void. The distress signal echoed into the vastness of space, a cry for help that traveled faster than light. Hours passed, then a day. Silence. No response. Jikar clenched his fists. Had the signal been lost? Or worse, was no one willing to help? The Xelari had few allies. Their empire rarely dealt with outsiders unless necessary. Many saw them as distant and unapproachable. Then, after nearly 2 days, a single response came through. "This is Commander Elias Voss of the Odyssey. I received your distress call. What's your situation?" A murmur spread through the bridge. A response. After all this time, Jikar narrowed his eyes at the message. Tilan hesitated. "Captain, it's a human." Silence. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Humans were unpredictable, reckless. The Xelari viewed them as an inferior, chaotic species. They were new to interstellar space, barely a few hundred years into deep space travel. Could they really trust a human to help them? Jikar exhaled sharply. Right now, they had no choice. "Reply," he ordered. Tilan nodded and sent back a message. "Vilthar is stranded. Main engine failure. Oxygen supply critical. Assistance required." Seconds later, the response came. "Understood. I'm on my way." The human arrives. The wait was agonizing. Time dragged on as the crew prepared for the arrival of the unknown human. Some whispered doubts. Others watched the dying life's support levels with increasing worry. Then a small dot appeared on the main screen, a ship approaching at high speed. The Odyssey was smaller than the Vilfar, a rugged, older model spacecraft. It looked far less advanced than any Xelari ship. But it had arrived. The screen crackled to life, and for the first time, the crew saw Elias Voss. The human looked different from the Xelari. Shorter, broader, with deep brown eyes and a rough beard. He wore a simple flight suit, and his expression was calm but focused. "Looks like you folks ran into some bad luck," Elias said, his voice carrying a confident ease. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Jikar studied the human carefully. His instincts told him that trusting an outsider, especially a human, was dangerous. But the flickering oxygen levels reminded him that hesitation would cost lives. "Permission to dock granted," Jikar said reluctantly. Moments later, a soft clunk echoed through the ship as the Odyssey attached to their airlock. The doors hissed open, and Elias stepped aboard. The Xelari crew stiffened as he entered. He was different, unpredictable, and yet he was here. Elias glanced around, taking in the dim lights and tense faces. He gave a small nod. "All right, show me the problem. Let's get you folks out of here." Jikar hesitated only for a moment before leading the way. He still didn't trust the human. But as the ship's failing systems groaned around them, he knew one thing for certain. Elias Voss was their only hope. The air inside the Vilfar was stale. The ship's failing life support systems struggled to keep oxygen levels steady. The dim emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows across the metallic walls. Elias Voss walked down the corridor, his boots clanking softly against the floor. He glanced around, his sharp human eyes scanning the ship's condition. The Exilari crew watched him with quiet suspicion. Captain Jacare led the way, his posture stiff. He didn't like this situation. A human, one of the most unpredictable species in the galaxy, was now their only hope. Silari culture valued precision, control, and logic. Humans, on the other hand, were impulsive, reckless, and chaotic. Yet, here was Elias, stepping forward to help them when no one else had. They reached the engine control room. Large screens flickered with red warning symbols. The main engine was completely offline. Elias whistled low. "You weren't kidding. This thing's a mess." Chikur's eyes narrowed. "Can you fix it?" Elias crouched next to the main control panel and examined the damage. He didn't need advanced technology to see the problem. It was a full power relay failure. The ship's energy was not reaching the engine core. Without it, the ship was just a floating piece of metal in deep space. He tapped the screen, frowning. "Your system is too rigid." Tilan, the ship's communication officer, crossed her arms. "What do you mean?" Elias shrugged. "Silari tech is built to be perfect. When something breaks, it shuts everything down instead of adapting. You guys follow rules, step by step, no shortcuts." He grinned. "Humans? We like shortcuts." Chikare frowned. "Shortcuts lead to failure." Elias smirked. "Shortcuts also save lives." He turned back to the control panel, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. Improvisation is a human specialty. Elias moved quickly. He pulled a small tool from his belt and opened the panel. Wires, circuits, and damaged components lay exposed. The Exilari engineers watched in shock as he began cutting and reconnecting wires without even consulting a system manual. Tilan stepped forward, alarmed. "What are you doing?" "Fixing your problem," Elias said, not looking up. "Your system is designed to wait for full repairs, but we don't have time for that. I'm bypassing the damaged circuits and rerouting power directly to the engine core. That is not protocol." Another engineer protested. Elias sighed. "Yeah, well, protocol is why you are still stuck." Chikare was watching closely. He hated to admit it, but the human was making progress. The control panel flickered, and for the first time in days, some of the warnings turned yellow instead of red. Tilan stared at the screen. "It's working." Elias grinned. "Told you. Sometimes, you just gotta force the machine to work for you." Chikare stepped forward. "How long until full power?" Elias wiped his forehead. "I've stabilized the flow, but your engine core needs a proper restart. I'd say 4 hours." Chikare considered this. The ship still had oxygen for about 6 hours. If the human was right, they would survive. Before he could respond, the ship's alarm blared. A warning flashed on the screen. "Incoming vessels detected. A new threat." Tilan's hands moved quickly over the control panel. "Captain, we have a problem. 3 ships approaching fast." Chikare's expression darkened. "Can you identify them?" A few seconds later, the answer appeared on the screen. The air on the bridge grew tense. "Kevar warships." Elias frowned. "Who are the Kevar?" Chikare's jaw tightened. "Scavengers. Pirates. They raid damaged ships for parts and crew." Elias understood immediately. The Kevar weren't coming to help. They were coming to loot the Vilfar and take survivors as prisoners, or worse. "We don't have weapons," Tilan said, voice tense. "We cannot fight them." Chikare turned to Elias. "Can you accelerate the repairs?" Elias ran a hand through his hair. "If you want the engine to explode." "Sure." Chikair cursed under his breath. The Vilfar was helpless. Their only hope was to stall the Kever long enough for Elias to finish the engine repairs. Elias cracked his knuckles. All right, we need a plan. Chikair raised an eyebrow. You have one. A grin spread across the human's face. I always have a plan. The alarms on the Vilfar continued to blare, the red lights flashing like a heartbeat of panic. The Kevar warships were closing in fast. The Exilari crew worked furiously at their control panels, but there was little they could do. Their weapons were offline, their shields were weak, and the engine was still inoperable. Chikair turned to Elias. You said you had a plan. Elias smirked, his fingers flying across the broken control panel. I do, but you're not gonna like it. Chikair folded his arms. We do not have time for human games. Elias chuckled. Trust me, Captain, this isn't a game. This is survival. He turned to the others. Listen up, people. Your ship may not be working, but it still has power. And that means we can make the Kevar think twice before attacking. Talan frowned. How? Elias pointed to the ship's power core readings. Your reactor is still functional, right? One of the auxiliary engineers nodded. Yes, but it's isolated from the engine system. Good. That means we can use it as a bluff. Chikair narrowed his eyes. Explain. Elias grinned. We're gonna make them think this ship is a death trap. A deadly illusion. Elias quickly set to work, moving between control panels and rerouting power. He explained his plan as he worked. The Kevar are scavengers, right? They only attack if they think it's easy. Chikair nodded. Correct. Then we make this ship seem like it's not worth the risk, Elias said. We overload some of the power conduits to create a false energy surge. To them, it'll look like the reactor is about to explode. Talan's eyes widened. You want to trick them into thinking the ship is unstable. Bingo. Elias snapped his fingers. If they think this place is going nuclear, they won't come near it. No pirate wants to get caught in an explosion. Chikair was skeptical. This is reckless. Elias grinned. Welcome to human problem solving. The auxiliary crew hesitated. This plan was risky, unconventional, and completely against their training. But as the Kevar warships closed in, they had no better option. Chikair clenched his jaw. Do it. The bluff begins. Elias connected his portable datapad to the Vilthar systems. He rerouted excess power from the reactor into the ship's external sensors. To anyone scanning the ship, it would look like an uncontrolled energy buildup, exactly what would happen before a core meltdown. At the same time, he ordered the auxiliary engineers to vent small amounts of plasma gas into space, making it seem like the ship was already breaking apart. Talan watched as the Kevar ships slowed their approach. It's working, she whispered. Elias smirked. Told you. No one wants to board a ship that's about to explode. Chikair was beginning to see why humans were so dangerous, not because they had the best technology, but because they could think in ways no other species would. But the danger wasn't over yet. The Kevar's lead ship sent a transmission. A deep, gravelly voice filled the bridge. Lari vessel, your ship is unstable. Power down all systems, and we will assist. Elias scoffed. Assist? Yeah, right. Chikair's expression hardened. They are testing us. If we show weakness, they will attack. Elias nodded. Time to make them believe the lie. He turned to Talan. Can you make our comms sound distorted, like our ship is losing power? Talan hesitated, then quickly adjusted the transmission. The next time they spoke, their voices would sound weak and broken. Chikair leaned forward. This is Captain Chikair of the Vilfar. Our systems are failing. Reactor is unstable. Advise. Clear. Safe distance. The transmission crackled with static. Elias crossed his fingers, hoping the Kevar would take the bait. A long silence followed. Then the Kevar ships slowly began to turn. One by one, they powered down their weapons and pulled away from the Vilfar. Talan exhaled in relief. They're leaving. Elias grinned. Told you it would work. Chikere stared at the human, his expression unreadable. You took a great risk. Elias shrugged. That's kind of what we do. A high price. The immediate danger was gone, but they weren't safe yet. Chikere turned to Elias. How much time do we have before they realize the trick? Elias' smile faded. Not long. Maybe an hour before they figure out we faked it. Chikere nodded. Then we finish the repairs now. Elias moved quickly, returning to the engine controls. The auxiliary engineers worked beside him, following his unconventional methods. For the first time, they weren't arguing about protocol. They were simply working. Finally, after nearly an hour of intense labor, a green light flickered on the control panel. Elias grinned. Engines are online. Chikere wasted no time. Activate them. Now. Talan engaged the thrusters. The Vilfar shuddered as power surged through its systems. The ship, once dead in the water, now moved forward with renewed strength. On the main screen, the Kevar ships were already turning back toward them. The scavengers had realized the truth. Elias clenched his fists. We need to get out of here. Fast. Chikere gave the order. Full speed. Take us away from this sector. The engines roared to life. The Vilfar accelerated, leaving the Kevar warships behind. The pirates tried to chase, but they were too slow. Within minutes, the auxiliary ship was safely out of reach. The crew erupted into cheers. For the first time since their distress signal was sent, they were truly safe. Chikere turned to Elias. He studied the human for a long moment before finally speaking. You saved us. Elias grinned. Yeah, well, someone had to. Chikere extended his hand. For the first time in history, auxiliary captain shook hands with a human. Thank you, Elias Voss. Elias shook his hand firmly. No problem, Captain, but something tells me our adventure isn't over yet. Chikere nodded. He had a feeling the human was right. The Vilfar soared through the vast darkness of space, its engines humming with newfound strength. The Kevar warships had been left behind, and for the first time in days, the auxiliary crew felt a sense of relief. Elias Voss leaned back in his chair on the bridge, stretching his arms. Well, that was fun, he said with a grin. Captain Chikere gave him a sharp look. Your definition of fun is questionable, human. Elias chuckled. Hey, we made it out alive, didn't we? Chikere couldn't argue with that. The human's reckless tactics had saved them, though he still found it hard to believe that such improvisation could actually work. The auxiliary believed in precision and planning, but Elias Voss had proven that sometimes thinking outside the rules was the only way to survive. Flan checked the long-range scanners. Kevar ships are no longer pursuing us, she reported. They must have realized they were tricked. Good, Chikere said. We set a course for auxiliary space. We must return home and report this incident. But Elias frowned. He had been around long enough to know that problems rarely ended so easily. His instincts told him something was wrong. Hold on, he said. Before we relax, maybe we should check if anyone else picked up your distress signal. Chikere turned toward him. What do you mean? Elias leaned forward. Think about it. You sent an open distress signal into deep space. Anyone could have heard it. The Kevar showed up, but what if someone else did too? Talan's fingers moved over the controls. I will scan for any recent activity in our sector. A few seconds later, the screen flickered, and her expression darkened. Captain, the human is right. Chikere frowned. Explain. Talan hesitated. A large vessel entered this region not long after we sent our distress call. It is heavily armed and approaching our position. Fast. The bridge fell silent. Elias sighed. I hate being right sometimes. The unidentified ship. Chikere's mind raced. The Vilfar was functional again, but after everything they had been through, They were in no condition for another fight. "Can you identify the vessel?" he asked. Tlan's fingers danced over the control panel. A blurry image appeared on the screen. It was a massive ship, nearly twice the size of the Vilfar. Its hull was dark, with no clear markings. "It does not match any known Xilari or Kever designs," Tilan said. "It is something else." Elias rubbed his chin. "That's never a good sign." Chair turned to his crew. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. If they show hostility, we must escape." Tlan nodded. "They are hailing us." The crew tensed. Jakar exchanged a look with Elias before nodding. "Open communications." The screen flickered, and a face appeared, a reptilian creature with golden scales and piercing black eyes. It studied them in silence before speaking. "Xilari vessel, you sent a distress signal. You are now under our authority." Chakar's fists clenched. "Who are you?" The alien's eyes gleamed. "We are the Vraxis Dominion. And you are trespassers. A dangerous encounter." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Trespassers? In deep space. Last I checked, no one owns the void." The Vraxis commander narrowed his eyes. "Your presence here is an offense. You will surrender your ship immediately." Chakar's voice was firm. "This is Xilari territory. We do not recognize your authority." The Vraxis commander gave a cold smile. "Then you will be destroyed." The screen went dark. Tlan's hands flew over the console. "They are charging weapons." Elias jumped to his feet. "We need to move. Now." Chikar barked an order. "Full power to engines. Evasive maneuvers." The Vilthar jerked forward, its thrusters blazing as it sped away from the massive warship. But the Vraxis vessel was fast. Energy blasts shot through space, narrowly missing the Xilari ship. Elias gripped the console to keep from falling. "Any weapons online?" Tlan shook her head. "Minimal. We cannot win in a direct fight." Chakar's mind worked quickly. "Then we do not fight. We escape. A daring plan." Elias grinned. "I like the way you think, Captain." He pulled up the star map. "There's a nearby asteroid field. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them." Chikar nodded. "Tlan, set course for the asteroid field." The Vilthar veered toward the dense cluster of floating rocks. The Vraxis ship followed, still firing. A blast struck the Xilari vessel, shaking the entire ship. "Shields at 30%. A crew member called out. Chikar remained calm. "Hold steady." The asteroid field loomed ahead. Massive rocks spun in space, colliding with each other at dangerous speeds. It was a death trap for any ship that couldn't navigate it properly. Elias smirked. "Let's see if these guys know how to fly." The Vilthar plunged into the asteroid field, weaving through the chaotic maze of debris. The Vraxis warship hesitated before entering, its large size making it harder to maneuver. Elias turned to Jakar. "I've got an idea. What if we use the asteroids against them?" Chikar raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Elias pointed at the control panel. "We still have some external thrusters, right? If we fire them at the right moment, we can knock one of those big asteroids right into their ship." Chikar considered the plan. It was risky, but it could work. "Tlan, calculate the trajectory of the largest asteroid in our path," he ordered. She worked quickly, then nodded. "Ready." Chikar turned to Elias. "Do it." Elias activated the thrusters. A powerful burst of energy struck a massive asteroid, sending it spinning straight toward the Vraxis ship. The enemy vessel tried to dodge, but it was too late. The asteroid smashed into its hull, tearing through its armor. Explosions erupted across the warship. Elias whooped. "Bullseye." Chikar gave a small nod of approval. "Good work, human." The Vraxis ship, heavily damaged, stopped its pursuit. The Vilthar sped away, leaving the danger behind. Tlan exhaled. "We are clear." Chikar turned to Elias. You have proven yourself useful once again. Elias smirked. That's what I do. But deep inside, Jakar knew this was not the last time they would see the Vraxis Dominion. This was only the beginning. The Vilthar moved swiftly through space, leaving the asteroid field and the damaged Vraxis warship behind. The Exilari crew worked quickly to assess the damage to their ship. The battle had taken a toll. Shields were low, and several systems were unstable. But for now, they were safe. Elias Voss leaned against a control panel, breathing heavily. Well, that was fun. Shker shot him a look. Your definition of fun continues to concern me, human. Elias chuckled. Hey, we survived, didn't we? Talan interrupted, her voice serious. Captain, we have another problem. Shker turned to her. What is it? Talan pointed to the ship's internal scans. Before we entered the asteroid field, something strange happened. A small energy spike appeared on Deck 3. It was brief, but unusual. Shker frowned. Could it be a malfunction? Talan shook her head. Unlikely. The signal was too precise. Elias narrowed his eyes. You're saying someone, or something, might have gotten on board. A cold silence filled the bridge. Shker's grip tightened. We need to investigate. Now, the search begins. Shker, Elias, and a small team of Siluri soldiers moved cautiously through the dim corridors of the Vilthar. The ship's lighting flickered in places, still recovering from the recent fight. Elias checked his sidearm. I really hope this is just a false alarm. Shker nodded. So do I. They reached Deck 3, where the energy spike had been detected. The hallway was empty, but something felt off. Talan scanned the area with her handheld device. There's a faint energy signature here. Something was definitely in this section. Elias glanced around. If something got on board, where would it hide? Shker thought for a moment. The lower storage bay. It has many compartments and limited security. Elias sighed. Of course, the dark and creepy place. Why is it always the storage bay? A dangerous discovery. The team arrived at the lower storage bay. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing rows of metal crates and equipment. Shker signaled for silence as they stepped inside. The air felt heavy, and the faint hum of the ship's systems seemed louder in the stillness. Elias moved cautiously, his weapon ready. If there's anything in here, now's the time to come out. No response. Shker motioned to one of the soldiers to check behind a stack of crates. The Exilari warrior nodded and stepped forward. Suddenly, a blur of movement. Something leaped from the shadows, striking the soldier and knocking him to the ground. The team reacted instantly, weapons raised. Elias' eyes widened. What the hell is that? Before them stood a tall, armored figure. Its body was covered in dark, flexible plating, and its eyes glowed a deep red. It held a sleek energy blade in one hand, moving with an eerie silence. Shker's voice was cold. Vraxis infiltrator. The battle in the shadows. The Vraxis warrior moved like lightning. It lunged at the nearest soldier, slicing through his weapon with its energy blade. Elias fired his blaster, but the infiltrator dodged with unnatural speed. The blast struck a crate, sending sparks flying. Shker charged forward, engaging the Vraxis in close combat. Their blades clashed, sending echoes through the storage bay. The Exilari captain was strong, but the infiltrator was fast. Talan fired her rifle, forcing the infiltrator to retreat slightly. Elias saw his chance. Cover me, he shouted. He grabbed a nearby metal pipe and swung it at the infiltrator's legs. The blow connected, knocking the warrior off balance for just a second. Shker didn't waste the opportunity. With a powerful strike, he slashed across the infiltrator's chest. Sparks erupted as the energy blade cut through armor. The Vraxis warrior let out a sharp mechanical hiss and staggered back. It activated a small device on its wrist and vanished. A second later, a faint shimmer in the air rushed toward the ventilation system. Tlen's voice was urgent. It's escaping. Elias cursed. Oh, come on. Why do they always have cloaking tech? Chikere grabbed his communicator. Seal all exits on Deck 3. It cannot be allowed to leave. The hunt continues. The crew worked quickly, locking down sections of the ship. The infiltrator was still aboard, but now it was hiding. Elias exhaled. Great, now we have a ghost running around. Chikere's expression was grim. It will not remain hidden for long. We will find it. Tlen checked her scanner again. Before it disappeared, I detected a signal transmission. It was brief, but strong. Elias' stomach sank. You're saying it sent a message? Tlen nodded. Most likely. The Vraxis now know our exact location. Chikere's fists clenched. Then we have little time. Elias looked at the captain. What's the plan? Chikere's eyes burned with determination. First, we find and eliminate the infiltrator. Then, we prepare for what comes next. Tlen's voice was quiet but firm. If the Vraxis receive the signal, they are coming. Elias sighed. Why does it always have to be more bad news? Chikere placed a hand on his shoulder. Because this is what survival means, human. Elias nodded. Then let's survive. The Vilthar was quiet, but tension filled every corridor. The auxiliary crew moved carefully, weapons drawn, their eyes scanning every shadow. Somewhere on the ship, the Vraxis infiltrator was still hiding. And worse, its transmission had likely alerted the Vraxis fleet. Elias Voss gripped his blaster tightly as he moved beside Captain Chikere. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had faced many dangers before, but there was something unsettling about this enemy. It was fast, intelligent, and almost impossible to detect. Tlen's voice crackled over the communicator. Captain, I've locked down most sections of the ship, but I cannot detect the infiltrator's exact position. Its cloaking device is advanced. Chikere frowned. Then we must force it out of hiding. Elias raised an eyebrow. And how do we do that? Call it out for a duel. Chikere ignored the sarcasm. It has a mission. It will not remain hidden forever. We must make ourselves the bait. Elias sighed. Oh great, I always love being the target. Setting the trap. Chikere and Elias moved toward the engineering bay. It was one of the most critical parts of the ship. If the infiltrator wanted to sabotage the Vilthar, this was the place to strike. Tlen's voice came through again. Captain, I will monitor the ship's sensors. If it makes a move, I will alert you. Chikere nodded. Understood. Elias leaned against a console. So we just wait here and hope the assassin takes the bait. Chikere's eyes remained focused. It will come. Minutes passed. The only sounds were the faint hum of the ship's systems. Elias felt his muscles tense. He hated waiting for an enemy he couldn't see. Then, a flicker of movement. Chikere reacted first, spinning and striking with his energy blade. But his weapon hit only air. Elias fired his blaster, but the shot missed. Something invisible moved fast, darting between the machinery. Tlen's voice rang out over the communicator. Behind you. Elias turned just in time to see the infiltrator decloak, its blade swinging toward him. A deadly fight. Elias barely dodged in time. The energy blade sliced through the console beside him, sending sparks flying. Chikere lunged, engaging the infiltrator in a fierce duel. Their blades clashed, sending out bursts of energy. The infiltrator was fast, but Chikere was stronger. He forced the enemy back with powerful strikes. Elias raised his blaster, but the infiltrator moved too quickly. It leaped over Chikere, landing behind Elias. Before Elias could react, the infiltrator's blade came down. A blast rang out. The infiltrator jerked as a bullet tore through its shoulder. Elias turned in shock. Wait, was that a gunshot? Behind them, Tlen stood with an old Silari projectile weapon in her hands. Smoke curled from the barrel. She raised an eyebrow. Cloaking devices do not work against primitive weapons. Elias grinned. I like your style. The infiltrator staggered but wasn't finished. It activated its wrist device, attempting to disappear again. Chikere didn't give it the chance. With a single powerful strike, he drove his blade into the infiltrator's chest. The Vraxis warrior let out a low, hissing sound before collapsing. Silence. Elias exhaled. Well, that was stressful. Chikere retrieved his blade and turned to Tulan. Good shot. Tulan nodded. We must dispose of the body. But first, I have more troubling news. Chikare's expression darkened. What is it? Tulan's eyes flickered with concern. The transmission the infiltrator sent, it was received. Elias frowned. Meaning? Tulan took a deep breath. The Vraxis fleet is on its way, and they will be here soon. Preparing for the worst. Chikere wasted no time. How long until they arrive? Tulan checked the ship's sensors. Less than an hour. Elias cursed. Not much time to celebrate, huh? Chikere turned to his crew. Prepare the Vilfar for battle. We will not be caught off guard. Tulan's voice was hesitant. Captain, our ship is damaged. If we face the Vraxis fleet directly, we may not survive. Chikare's expression was grim. Then we must find another way. Elias rubbed his chin. We can't outrun them, and we can't fight them head-on. So maybe we trick them. Tulan tilted her head. Explain. Elias smirked. We already tricked the Kevar once, right? Let's do it again, only bigger this time. Chikere listened carefully. What do you propose? Elias pointed at the asteroid field on the navigation map. We lure them in here. It's dangerous, full of unstable rocks. If we make it look like we're hiding, they'll come charging in after us. Tulan's eyes widened. And if we detonate key asteroids at the right moment? Elias snapped his fingers. Boom. A whole fleet caught in a storm of their own making. Chikere considered the plan. It was risky. If they missed him the detonations, they could be trapped as well. But if it worked, it could wipe out the Vraxis fleet without a direct fight. Finally, he nodded. We will do it. Elias grinned. Now that's what I like to hear. The final stand begins. The crew of the Vilfar moved quickly. Tulan calculated the best locations for the asteroid detonations. Chikere coordinated the ship's defenses. Elias helped prepare explosives to plant on key asteroids. The countdown began. The Vraxis fleet was coming. And this time, the Vilfar was ready. The Vilfar drifted toward the asteroid field, its engines humming softly. The Kexilari crew worked quickly, placing explosive charges on key asteroids while keeping a close watch on the sensors. The Vraxis fleet was closing in fast. Elias Voss wiped sweat from his forehead. This plan better work. Chikere, standing beside him, gripped the controls tightly. It will work. We have no other choice. Flan's voice came through the communicator. The Vraxis fleet is now within scanning range. Estimated arrival in 5 minutes. Elias took a deep breath. All right. Time to put on a good show. The bait is set. Chikere activated the ship's distress beacon, sending out a fake emergency signal. The message was simple. Silari ship disabled. Requesting immediate assistance. Elias smirked. Let's see if they fall for it. The crew waited. Seconds felt like hours. Then, the sensors lit up. Tulan's voice was urgent. The Vraxis have taken the bait. They are moving into the asteroid field. Chikare's eyes burned with determination. Prepare to detonate the charges on my command. The Vilfar remained motionless, appearing defenseless as the Vraxis ships advanced. Elias watched the enemy fleet through the viewport. They're getting close. Chikare's grip tightened. Closer. The Vraxis warships pushed deeper into the asteroid field, navigating through the massive floating rocks. Their weapons were ready, expecting an easy kill. Tulan's voice was sharp. Now, Captain. Chikare's eyes flashed. Detonate. The trap is sprung. A series of massive explosions erupted across the asteroid field. Gigantic rocks shattered into smaller fragments, creating a deadly storm of debris. The Vraxis fleet had no time to react. Elias grinned as he watched the chaos. Boom! Several Vraxis ships were struck immediately, their shields failing under the onslaught of high-speed debris. One ship spun out of control, crashing into a large asteroid. Another was torn apart by a chain reaction of explosions. Tlan's voice was filled with excitement. Direct hits. Multiple enemy ships are down. Chikere wasted no time. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here before we are caught in the destruction. The Vilthar powered up its engines and weaved through the collapsing asteroid field. Behind them, the Vraxis fleet struggled to escape the deadly trap. Elias watched as more enemy ships collided with asteroids or were struck by debris. Looks like we just turned the hunters into the hunted. A desperate chase. Not all of the Vraxis ships were destroyed. A few managed to evade the worst of the explosions. The largest warship, the Drazel, emerged from the debris, its weapons locking onto the Vilthar. Tlan's voice turned urgent. One warship is still pursuing us. They are charging weapons. Chikare's expression hardened. Shields up. Return fire. The Vilthar fired its energy cannons, but the Drazel was heavily armored. It absorbed the blasts and retaliated with a barrage of plasma fire. The ship shook violently. Sparks flew from control panels. Elias gritted his teeth. We can't take too many hits like that. Chikare's mind raced. He had expected the trap to eliminate all of the enemy ships, but this one had survived. They needed a new plan, fast. Then Elias had an idea. Tlan, do we have any charges left? Tlan checked the inventory. One remaining explosive charge, but it's not strong enough to destroy that warship. Elias grinned. We don't need to destroy it. We just need to blind it. The final move. Chikere understood immediately. Tlan, prepare the charge. We will eject it in front of their sensors. Tlan worked quickly. Ready. Chikere gave the order. Deploy the charge. Now. The explosive charge was released from the Vilthar, just as the Drazel moved closer. Elias watched closely. Come on. Take the bait. The enemy ship, believing it was a torpedo, fired at it immediately. The explosion sent out a bright pulse of energy and radiation, temporarily blinding their sensors. Tlan shouted, their targeting systems are down. Chikere didn't hesitate. Full speed ahead. Get us out of their range. The Vilthar accelerated, escaping the asteroid field and leaving the damaged Drazel behind. Elias laughed. That was way too close. Tlan checked the sensors. The Vraxis ship is still operational, but they are unable to pursue us. Chikere allowed himself a small smile. Then we have won. A victory earned. As the Vilthar moved into safe space, the crew let out a collective breath of relief. The battle was over. Elias stretched his arms. I gotta say, you Xilari sure know how to keep things exciting. Chikere looked at him. And you, human, have proven yourself more than once. Tlan nodded. Your tactics were unconventional, but effective. Elias smirked. That's human ingenuity for you. Chikere turned to the crew. We have survived a great battle today, but this war is not over. The Vraxis will return, and when they do, we will be ready. Elias crossed his arms. Well, if you need a human around, you know where to find me. Chikere placed a hand on his shoulder. You are more than a guest now, Elias. You are one of us. Elias smiled. Then let's see where this crazy adventure takes us next. As the Vilthar continued its journey through space, one thing was certain. Humanity had once again proved its worth. And this was only the beginning.